Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues at Western Kentucky University. The Graduate School is pleased to present its sixth Grad Learn series of talks, and today we are blessed by the presence of Dr. Frankie Felder. The topic is very important to all of us. How do we strategize and promote the success of each and every student? I'm grateful to ETS for this continued partnership, and to do the introduction of Frankie Felder, I kindly asked Ms. Dawn Lipker from ETS to introduce our esteemed and distinguished speaker for today's Grad Learn seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Kudali and Samantha, for your partnership. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dawn Lipker. I'm an Associate Director of Academic Partnerships, and I work directly with Western Kentucky. I'm your main point of contact for questions you may have around graduate recruitment, holistic admissions, and the use of GRE. We're super glad that you've joined us. We're excited about today. Before we get to the main event, we do ask that you stay on mute for the beginning of the session, just so we can get through a few slides. But Dr. Felder will ask you to come off mute and encourage you to do so, because there are some really interactive questions we have about halfway through the presentation. But we do encourage you to log questions in the chat feature. That way we can monitor those and do our best to get to every question before our time is up. We will be recording this session. We'll share it out, and I do believe that the Graduate School posts it on their YouTube channel. So now, our speaker, Frankie Felder. Frankie is Emeritus Associate Professor of Education and Senior Associate Dean of the Graduate School at Clemson University. She developed and managed graduate policies and procedures, developed and directed diversity initiatives, and developed the institutional infrastructure for international programs and services. She has served on the GRE board and chaired the GRE board Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. In recognition of her work with graduate students and faculty, Clemson University created the Frankie Felder Graduate Student Award of Excellence, recognizing persistence and excellence in graduate students. She has received numerous university and community awards for strengthening Clemson's international and diversity goals, and for building connections between communities, schools, graduate education, and research. Also, the Council of Southern Graduate Schools recognized her as providing outstanding contributions to graduate education in the Southern region for her presentations on diversity and graduate education. We are proud to have Frankie as one of our ETS graduate education advisors, and we are excited she's presenting today. Frankie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dawn, and good afternoon, everyone. Dawn is going to be advancing the slides for me, and so you'll hear me say next, and then we'll go to the next slide. And right now, I'd like to say next. On our agenda today, as you can see from this overview, we'll talk just a minute about ETS's engagement with the graduate community. What are the goals of graduate admissions? How to help incoming students be successful, and strategies for helping enrolled students succeed. Next. So regarding ETS's engagement with the graduate community, in the next two slides, I'm going to share just a bit of information with you about how ETS regularly engages with graduate schools and graduate programs. And I know that you've had some sessions with us before, so you might know this. So I'm just very quickly going to perhaps remind some of you and perhaps introduce some of you to something that ETS has created. In 2019, ETS created the Office for Graduate Education Engagement, and the purpose was to work more actively and directly with the graduate community. The office is made up of strategic advisors, and you see us there, all from different campuses and all together having more than 167 years of experience working with graduate schools and graduate students. Our charge is to provide thought leadership around holistic admissions, research, and best practices, both to ETS and to the graduate community. And since the team was formed in 2019, we've given hundreds of presentations and webinars to national, regional, and campus audiences. So 4 things we do want you to know about ETS. First of all, it is a non-for-profit organization that has been researching solutions to advance quality and equity in education for more than 75 years. And in addition to administering the tests that we're all familiar with here in the United States, ETS also administers 50 million tests annually in 180 countries. Next. The goal of graduate admissions, the overarching goal of graduate admissions is to empower students to be able to contribute new knowledge and new practices to a field of study. Contributing new knowledge is a tall order, but that's the expectation for those engaged in graduate education. And it's a special accomplishment that, according to the US Census Bureau's Educational Attainment Survey in 2018, only 13% of the US population had achieved. So individuals involved in the admissions process at the graduate level are searching for a very select group of people. And it becomes important then to be as confident as possible about your approach to identifying those candidates ready for this level of study, as well as for understanding how to help those students succeed once you've selected them. You want to begin with the end in mind, knowing what skills your graduate students are interested in developing and what careers they want to pursue will help to inform your decisions about who is the best fit for your program. You may have never thought about it like this before, but a significant part of student success in graduate school actually depends on faculty success in the admissions process. Finding the right students requires developing an intentional admissions process. And then once students begin their programs, as we all know, their lives continue to be impacted by many personal life circumstances. Consequently, they don't come with a guarantee. Despite the best efforts expended by everyone involved in the admissions process, but intentional interventions of support can bolster retention. And so it's important to be prepared with plans in place to actively engage students throughout their programs of study, depending on their needs. Next. To be very explicit, the goal of graduate admissions is to select highly qualified, talented applicants who will complete the program timely, that they exhibit satisfactory academic backgrounds and attributes, such as resiliency and motivation. They're applicants who exhibit the desired interpersonal, intrapersonal skills that you wish to have in your program. They work well with others. They have good communication skills. They exhibit honesty and ethical behavior, and they will contribute to the productivity of the program. That is, that their goals for their graduate study match the goals of your program. Their basic training and or the skills that are required in the field, they have at least some exposure to that and are prepared to increase their knowledge in that regard. And they exhibit a high potential. Additionally, you were looking for students who can help to expand the talent pool in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next. So helping incoming students be successful. Let's look at some intentional ways to help incoming students you've just selected to be successful. For every graduate admissions committee, there is a moment, a nervous pause that happens after the committee has done its work and secured the new incoming class of graduate students. And the question gets asked, okay, so now what? And for many committees, they feel rightly so that their work is done. especially for committees that have had to review an overwhelming number of applicants. After the admissions committee has done its work, the committee wants to ensure that their diligent efforts are supported. They want to ensure that the students follow through and enroll, first of all, and then they want to ensure that once the students do arrive, they'll be successful. So building community becomes critical. Graduate students thrive in communities that are intellectually engaging, that are supportive to their needs, and that enable each student to experience a sense of community, a sense of belonging. So now it becomes time for the entire graduate program to do its work. All faculty and staff should engage in helping to build community. That is, the environment in which the program operates should minimally meet these basic standards. It should be intellectually engaging. It should be a supportive environment and welcoming, and it should be professional. And it's everyone's responsibility to help make it so. In addition, thought should go into determining how specific milestones and yearly student progress will be assessed. This may become the work of a retention and a progression committee, or it may be a graduate program coordinator, or it may be centralized at the graduate school. Review of success should guide how changes can be made annually to improve and close any identified gaps. Next. It's important to understand where students are coming from. And there are three initial principles to consider for each student. First of all, that every student is a unique individual. Secondly, that students enter programs with varying degrees of enthusiasm and varying degrees of concerns, and they may experience an emotional roller coaster. And third, students are impacted by multiple communities. So let's examine these. First, every student is a unique individual. Students come to the program with unique mental and physical attributes and personal experiences and that have shaped their individuality. And their uniquenesses, as we all know, include their intellectual capabilities, their educational experiences and opportunities that have been available to them from elementary school on through undergraduate school. And even if they've already been in a master's program and are applying for a doctoral program, their educational experiences and opportunities will vary. Their problem-solving skills and strategies are unique. Their acquired skills or talents excuse me, are shaped to a varying degree by their parents, their teachers, and their coaches. The social skills that students will bring to the program are partly dependent on their disposition, on their situations, and on the cultures they come from. And then, of course, the resources, the financial resources, the social support systems, the time they have invested in their education careers to date, the time that they'll have to invest in the future. All of these are unique to each and every individual student. Students may experience an emotional roller coaster. So the students are excited, they got admitted, and they're proud of their new status as a graduate student. However, the imposter syndrome may set in. They may have self-doubts. They feel that perhaps they are not good enough. For example, they may have been admitted into an Ivy League institution, and they may wonder how and why that occurred. Or they may be the first in their family to pursue a graduate degree. Or they may experience concerns about challenges to their self-esteem. The case comes to mind at Clemson of an older graduate student who had been a senior officer and leader in his previous company, a vice president, and now having to adjust to being a student, being led by faculty members who were much younger than himself. Or perhaps they have concerns that they will not experience a sense of belonging. For example, they may not fit in with their department, their lab, and research, or other performance groups. Maybe they're the only male in an all-female program, or they're the first student of color in the program, or the only American in a lab of all Indian and Chinese students. Or they are the first and the only student on the campus from their country. Will they be able to make friends? An important mitigating strategy to help overcome some of these concerns is for students to find or build a social support network that will meet their emotional, personal, and/or civic engagement needs. To be able to have open discussion with students during the application phase is important to help alleviate concerns that may be properly or improperly being imagined in their minds that they will occur. And continuing in the vein of the emotional roller coaster, many other things could happen. So other ways include ways that are associated with non-academic responsibilities and concerns. I've always told students that life did not stop because they decided to go to graduate school. So learning how to balance life and labs, life and classes, life and research, and thesis or dissertation writing may take time in developing new time management skills. Then there may be health concerns, their own health, the health of friends and loved ones, financial concerns, both short and long-term issues, housing and transportation concerns, which may surface and require attention. I know, and probably you do as well, students have given birth right before comps. They've had parents and spouses who have been ill or have passed in the middle of their programs. Students have gotten divorced. Students have gotten married in the years since you admitted them into the program. And sometimes some of these things happen right at the very beginning of their experience in your graduate program. Other times it may be years into their work at the university, near important milestones, and nonetheless, they have to address these matters. And finally, however, students may experience, or may even think that they will experience, intense feelings of alienation or isolation, or issues of bias and prejudice. If so, clearly, these would be very disconcerting experiences and would require the intervention by the department, by an advisor, by the program director or the graduate school dean, student affairs units like the counseling center, or other administrative units like the Office of Access and Equity. And certainly no student wants to experience any of these in actuality, but it could happen. And certainly they can be anticipating it. So what to do? There are communities of influence that impact, that are associated with the academic and professional life of a graduate student. So being aware that multiple communities of influence will in fact impact the success of students, it is important in planning for successful matriculation of students that you've admitted. The feel of the environment is evident to students who either come to campus for an on-site visit or who visit virtually through meetings with prospective advisors or lab mates and department faculty and staff. Institutional data and institutional publications, your websites and so forth, Communicate much about the environment that students will encounter on your campus. Will these communities be supportive and welcoming? Will students be mentored by role models and/or other faculty in an environment of trust and camaraderie? Is the discipline and the professional field reflective of diversity or not? Are students aware of this? How will these issues impact the prospective student? Be willing to have open conversations with students about these matters. Invite them to share their thoughts about the environment that they experience when they're either there or that they experience virtually. And invite them to talk about their general levels of comfort, in addition to their excitement about getting admitted into your program. Secondly, there are communities of influence that are associated with life in general. They're non-academic. I suggest that, I don't know what just happened. I cannot see what happened. Okay,
We can
sorry.
still see and hear. Yeah.
Okay, you're still there. I apologize.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I suggest that it's especially useful to be cognizant of how these communities, these non-academic communities, influence international students from many countries, as their cultures greatly impact the relationships that individuals in their family and in the community have on their decision making, sometimes even in their choice of a major. So being aware, being prepared to engage students, communicating your interests and your concerns can help students overcome some of the potentially negative effects of these various communities of influence. Getting to know students initially in the admissions process through the interviews, the personal statements, the letters of recommendations, and the statements of purpose begins to provide significant information to help guide your planning for their ultimate success. So now we have some questions that we'd like to ask you. We know you've been thinking about admissions and graduate students, and you've been involved with students for a long time. So we'd like for you to think back to when you were a graduate student. What structures were in place to provide support for incoming newly admitted graduate students when you were in school? Were those structures sufficient for you as a newly admitted graduate student? What structures are in place now on your campus or in your program for newly admitted graduate students? Are they sufficient? And what could you change to improve the opportunity that your incoming students will be successful? If you would like to share your thoughts, and I hope you will, you can unmute at this point and tell me what, particularly when you were a graduate student, were there structures in place? How did people respond to you and engage you as a newly admitted student?
Good afternoon. I'll go. I'm Kanita DeClue. I'm in the mathematics department. When I worked in my doctorate program, there were quite a few African-American students. And so there were two faculty of color, and they would have us over to either one of their houses. They would host us, and just for us to get together to talk. And if we were doing something that we shouldn't do or should do something better, they were very open and telling us, like pulling our coattails, as they would say, telling us what we need to do, like you need a program of study, just how because the programs operate differently. And so this is how our program operates. You need a program of study, and this is what it is. You need to do this, you need to do that. And as long as we listen and follow it, we were pretty much successful. But I know that's not always the case, but they knew from being the only ones that what we needed. And so they stepped out and they did that for us.
Fantastic. And that's so important. And I hear that all the time. It's funny that I woke up this morning about 5 o'clock and I look on Facebook. If I do it at all, it's about that time of the morning. And I looked on Facebook and I saw a message from a former, I don't know if she's still a graduate dean, but she was a former dean at Howard University. And she had gone to a conference and somehow they arranged for students of color from numerous states to come together. And this was all this feedback from all these students saying, oh my goodness, this was the best thing that happened. We got to get together with students in our fields that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And what a feeling. The word they used was a belonging. It was so wonderful, and we're thanking them for taking the time to make that happen for them. So thank you, Kenita. I appreciate your input there. Is there anyone else? Are there any structures now in place on your campus for newly admitted graduate students that you can think about? Is there anything intentional that you all are doing now for students who are coming into your program?
I'll answer that, Dr. Felder, on behalf of the graduate school.
Okay.
So we do have an orientation in person since last fall, and we have a 3 email campaign wherein we provide information about 2 to 3 weeks prior to the orientation about high-level information about books, about advising, degree works, which we use that replaces the old program of study. And then in our new orientation, we invite we have a panel discussion that involves current students. We invite members from the counseling center to talk about services that they provide. We have a 15-minute short presentation from the registrar's office about degree works that helps them understand their program of study. And we also talk about graduate research and creative scholarship opportunities. Later, about in a couple of months, we actually have a series that we call Graduate Wellness, abbreviated as GradWell, wherein we talk about how to build resilience. So there is one workshop in the fall, and in the spring, we have a series of workshops building upon that building resilience. And in fact, on February 20th, we have a workshop in partnership with Counseling Center about how to stay motivated. We will follow that with how to deal with uncertainty, etc. So we have 1 workshop in the fall and 3 in the spring about graduate mental health, wellness, and being. And we also have a series of professional development workshops related to research and creative scholarship opportunities. We have internal grants, how to successfully write those. We just started a new series with the libraries called Grad Scholar, how to access library resources. And so this is from the institutional level. Apart from that, at the program level and at the college level, there are a multitude of opportunities, both virtually and in person, that helps provide a sense of belonging.
Excellent, excellent. And that's what I was going to say. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Kadali. Certainly at the institutional level, there is excellent work being done for students. And I hope that your students are taking advantage of these many opportunities that you are providing. One of the things I know that I have found over time is that while we had institutional programs, we had sometimes conflicts with the faculty who were not necessarily supportive of their students leaving labs, or not spending all the time in the labs or all the time in the program and participating in some of these events. And so it's important that the university, the institutional level, the graduate school, and the programs work collaboratively to ensure that students take advantage and avail themselves of these kinds of opportunities, because we do know that these kinds of programs help students to be successful. Okay, so we're going to skip the next question because it's very similar. And let's go to slide number 19. So I'm wondering if, as you have learned more about holistic admissions and holistic admission standards, have you identified new ways or better ways to support your students? Or has anything changed at the program level? So I'm asking now at the program level. Any input? Any thoughts?
Felder, I'll just chime in here. We look at the curricular requests from the programs, and what I noticed from 3 programs in the last year or so is they've used the word holistic admissions while describing the admission requirements. So we have advocated for holistic admissions since I started here, and it is really heartening to see that a number of departments have that terminology used in the graduate catalog. So programs are indeed looking at the whole portfolio, recognizing that individuals have strengths and weaknesses, and depending on the program, they give weightage to some, not necessarily disproportionately weightage to admission standards or GPA. So recognizing that students come from a lot of diverse background, holistic admission practices are indeed being embraced by a number of programs at WKU.
Excellent, excellent. And that's a good way to get started. And I suspect the longer departments and faculty have opportunity to engage in that process, the more creative kinds of ideas will be forthcoming to determine ways in which to help students to be successful. So thank you for that input. I appreciate that. Okay, next slide, please. So communication. That is the bottom line. In helping incoming students to succeed, you want to do as many of these things as you can. And all of the suggestions that Dr. Kajali has provided in terms of activities that are happening on campus that are made available, and letting students know as they come into your program or even during the application phase that these kinds of support structures and systems will be in place for them are things that will encourage them to, in fact, actually enroll in the fall. So you go out and you do all this work, and the admission committee does all its work to actually identify the right student for the program. The big idea now is that, in fact, they actually enroll in the program. And so to try to ensure that that occurs, communication is just simply critical. And that's what Dr. Kandali has been communicating to us, that this is what you all do. That you want to engage the applicant as much as possible so they do enroll, that you can utilize your enrolled students, as you are doing, a panel of enrolled students to help tell incoming students what it will be like to be a student on your campus. There's customer relationship management software that can ensure consistent communication to admitted students, and that all students receive the same communication about overarching general university guidelines and programs and opportunities and activities. You want to introduce and engage the institution and people in the department. Have, for example, your distinguished professors in the department to reach out to new students. Have leaders of relevant student groups, department and university student groups, to reach out. And on issues of housing, cultural resources, extracurricular activities, campus, and the program environment, all of these things would certainly be of interest to new and incoming students. Okay, next. So now the students have come, they've enrolled, they're there. And some of them now have been there for a while. What are some strategies for helping those enrolled students to succeed? And this slide, I think the slide belongs in both of these segments, how to help enrolled students succeed and how to help new incoming students succeed. Obviously, new incoming students are concerned about funding. And obviously, currently enrolled students are concerned about funding because funding is simply key for most students. The more financial support that a graduate student receives, the more they are likely to successfully matriculate in your program and the less personal stress they'll have while they are enrolled. The less they will experience trying to keep money matters in proper order while they're studying. And while you may not be able to provide all of the support here, I think most programs probably cannot. It's important to ensure that whatever financial commitments you make to students, whatever you offer, that they are offered clearly, articulated, in writing, and that you plan to honor those commitments. So there are things like multiple years of funding for most, particularly for doctoral students, that generally is pretty important. A doctoral student doesn't want to come from across the country or around the world thinking that they only have funding for a 5-year program and you're going to provide funding for 2 years or the first year even. And so multiple years of funding gets to be important. A lot of faculty are concerned that they want to spread funding as far and wide as possible, using funding as a recruitment mechanism. And so they will take what might be a very substantial funding for a doctoral student and split it up into 5 different packages for 5 different students, trying to recruit more students. But then that can present problems for students in year 2 or 3 or 5. And you don't want that to happen. So having thoughts and conversations about how to use whatever funding is available to the program in the best manner to support as many students as possible for as long as possible is an important conversation to have. Can you go back just a minute, please? Thank you. Some programs are able to provide a signing bonus, but I've only heard of a few programs that actually can do that. Other programs make sure that there are other benefits available alongside a stipend for a student working as a teaching assistant or a research assistant, and other benefits may include things like making available funding for travel to conferences and so forth, or making available a housing allowance. And so whatever it is that your program is capable of doing, the more students know about this in advance would certainly encourage them to consider seriously your programs. And certainly the more that you are able to do for them once they actually do arrive, and the more funding you can provide, the less stress, again, that they will experience while they're in. Okay. I would like to start this. There are a couple of slides here about a summer bridge program and how summer bridge programs can support particularly underrepresented students or underserved students from given populations. And I'm sure you're familiar with that. But what I'd like to say is I want to congratulate your Department of Earth, Environmental, and Atmospheric Sciences for its recent selection as a partner in the Bridge program for geosciences. And I want to encourage you, if you don't have a Bridge program associated with your specific program, that you observe the geosciences program and learn as much as you can about how they got funded and what they will be doing in order to increase success of diversity and to impact diversity, retention, and the culture broadly of geosciences on campus, as well as more broadly across the field around the country. And this is what Bridge programs are all about. Typically, they are 6 to 8 weeks long. If there's summer programs at the university, they are faculty guided. They provide research and mentoring to students who haven't had those opportunities. They provide academic and professional workshops. And students have an opportunity typically to be involved in guided journal clubs. Learning how to write articles that ultimately one day will lead to publications. They will have opportunities to be involved in a social support network with students that have backgrounds similar to their own, and providing therefore an opportunity to work in a new environment. Also providing an opportunity for students to take courses during the summer and get credit for them, and who wouldn't want to do that? So summer Bridge programs are just simply an opportunity if you are able to and are fortunate enough to have a program associated with your own graduate program to encourage students, again, who are for the most part underserved and underrepresented, to help diversify your own program. Next. Overall, what these programs assist with is the acclimation to campus and to your department, getting acquainted with the faculty advisor. What is that all about? With lab groups and department policies and procedures, how do they work? It helps the young people to acquire early professional development experiences to enhance their success in the graduate programs once they ultimately enroll. Okay, next, we won't go through how students apply. This particular program that we reference here in this slide deck is a program that was developed at UCLA. And here is what they did. Students had to be nominated to participate in this program. I don't know how the geosciences program on your campus will have students either apply or be nominated. But at UCLA, students had to be nominated. And these are some of the criteria which were considered: that they did not attend a Research 1 institution, they were underrepresented minority status, they were low economic status, they needed to be seeking faculty mentorship, that needed to be something that they were interested in experiencing, that they were female in STEM, they could be differently abled, they could have been out-of-state residents or first generation or first to college students. And so, certainly there are many other ways that you can identify how to select students to participate in a Bridge program. But the bottom line is, if you are so fortunate to be able to get funded to have a Bridge program, it's just simply a ripe opportunity for expanding diversity in your programs. Next. So there are many other iterations of support services that are provided to graduate students, some through individual programs and some through more centralized entities like the graduate school or other student services units. Most universities have varying degrees of all of these activities and services that are listed here. An important consideration, however, I think most important, is the faculty's knowledge of your university support structure and the faculty's knowledge of their students' needs for these services. Just as the math professor, I forgot, I didn't write your name down, I apologize, just said that the faculty, two faculty, African-American faculty, called those young people together and said, look, here's what you need to do, and here's how you need to do it. Knowing what the structures are, knowing what the expectations are, and then being willing to share that information with students. You can't ask for better. So I would ask you to ask yourself these questions. Is there an institutional or program or department culture on my campus that is supportive and encouraging of graduate students accessing these resources when needed? Am I personally knowledgeable about the services on our campus? And am I supportive and encouraging of my students seeking out these resources? How have I engaged with these services on campus? Because a recent study co-produced by the Council on Graduate Schools and the JED Foundation, entitled Mental Health of Graduate Students Sorely Overlooked. And this was released June the 28th, 2021. It speaks to issues of harassment, discrimination, bias, imposter syndrome, cultural acclimation, stigma of needing psychological resources, work-life imbalance, lack of diversity and inclusivity, lack of mentoring, and so forth. All the things we've already just basically talked about. And it's an excellent read. And particularly now, when mental health issues and mental health concerns post-COVID have risen to the highest level of concern on campuses for every level of participant, for undergraduates, for graduate students, for faculty and staff. Should faculty be acutely attuned to these potential detractors of student success? And should faculty be able to proactively refer students to appropriate campus resources when needed? Next. Additionally, professional development support is key for many students. It is often the reason that students choose one institution over the other, particularly having the opportunity to present their research and scholarship at conferences or other venues, and having the ability to participate in developing grant writing skills. And so these are some of the, as Dr. Kudali has also expressed, some of the types of professional development support programs that exist on other campuses. And I'm just happy to know that you're doing the same thing, that you are well ahead of the curve. A lot of programs are just getting started with university-wide professional development opportunities for graduate students. So I'm pleased to see that Western Kentucky is doing its job in this regard. Next. But there are still other ways to enhance the enrolled student experience. And one in particular is to simply brag about your students on your website. Know their accomplishments. Keep the graduate school, the university, and news outlets informed of their awards and their accomplishments and their recognitions. Create ways that students can have a voice and a vote on committees that develop policies and procedures that will impact them on their graduate journeys. Engage with the students enough that you can know about, you can acknowledge, you can honor, and celebrate their life events. Let students know and let students feel that you care about them as human beings, not just as students. So in regards to engaging with students, it goes without saying that regularly you should be meeting with the students that you're the primary advisor for or a member of their committees. And if the student doesn't contact you within some given period of time that makes good sense in your mind, you might want yourself to reach out to that student to check in on progress. I've run across students where that didn't happen, where they didn't reach out to their advisors did not reach out to them. And unfortunately, some students were well past that timeline that we established for students to complete degrees, typically 3 to 5 years in a master's program and maybe 5 to 7 years in a doctoral program, unless it's history. It might be longer, but there were students that had just fallen by the wayside before we put in place at Clemson a mechanism to help us from semester to semester. I would look at the status of every student that was enrolled in our graduate programs, full-time and part-time, so that we could begin to pull them back into the appropriate timelines that they were to be experiencing and completing their programs of study. So I'd encourage you, if you've got students that you know should be interacting with you, but they are not, for you to reach out to them. Next. Opportunities abound that relate directly to students' intended professions. Partnering with career centers to provide services for graduate students seems obvious, but often is not in place on campuses. Encouraging students' involvement in internships and externships and other state and national networks like the Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professoriate helps to keep students motivated and engaged, connected with other students and similar career goals, and provides insight into opportunities in their disciplines aside from the professoriate, which of course we know that all students don't wish to pursue. Being willing to talk with students about their intended career paths and offering wisdom in the application process, or being willing to write letters of support for them is certainly something helpful and helpful guidance that students would appreciate and would help them to successfully continue their programs, successfully complete their programs, successfully go into the career for which they started their programs in the first place. You might also really get creative and consider developing experiences like campus or lab exchange programs with other local or nearby institutions, or to host such an event there at Western Kentucky. Next. Irrespective of all these things that we talked about, one of the most salient kinds of experiences a graduate student could have is to be mentored. So a key ingredient for success is mentoring. And I really like the second bullet here that says, not all mentors are advisors, and not all advisors are mentors. So what is the difference? Mentoring versus advising. The difference is the amount of time invested, the deep engagement, the communication facilitated by a mutual trust and mutual goals between the mentee and the mentor, and the objectives that enable a student to grow personally and professionally. Any one of us who's ever been a graduate student, we've all received advice along the way from an interested faculty member, from a staff member or peer, and that's all good. However, Not all graduate students have been privileged to be involved in a mentoring relationship. What a phenomenal gift to give to a graduate student if you are so inclined. But again, it's different from just advising. It really requires time commitment on your part that you may not normally be willing to give to lots of folks. It's time consuming, but it is something that if a student has the opportunity to experience, what a gift. I think that an extraordinary graduate culture encourages faculty to go the extra mile, to extend personal care and guidance to students, and encourages students to seek out and desire this type of professional support. If you want to learn more about mentoring, we suggest that this publication, Entering Mentoring, a seminar to train a new generation of scientists. While it is about scientists, there are certainly transferable skills and information that's useful to other fields, and we'd encourage you to access that document. So now you're a quiet group. We have a poll. I don't know if the poll process will work. Will it? It might. Let's see. If
I just launched it, so as long as they can see it, it is working.
okay, and so where might they respond to this?
It should just pop up right in front of them.
Okay.
I've gotten one response, so at least somebody sees it.
Okay. Okay, so just if you would take a look at this, in order to be a good mentor, the individual should primarily assume which of the following roles: advisors, supporters, tutors, masters, models of identity, or all of the above. So if you could just click
You
on
have got 100% of participants saying F, all of the above.
F, all of the, excellent. You get A plus because we're in agreement. All of the above. In varying degrees, of course, you won't do all of these at the same level of support. You don't provide the same level of support, but all of these enable you to be a good mentor. And so that's very good. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which is a quote from Sonia Parker Redmond, who was a Tuskegee, who is a Tuskegee alumna and an outstanding mentor. And she says that effective mentoring involves not only the transfer of academic skills, attitudes, and behaviors, but a level of interaction, of trust and communication, which empowers a student with the knowledge and the confidence to grow academically and socially, regardless of their environment. And Dr. Parker came from a very low income family as a high school student, and a high school counselor first reached out to her and encouraged her to think about going to college. It wasn't something she was certainly not thinking about while she was in high school. She did end up going to Tuskegee, and when she went there, what she experienced in terms of faculty wrapping their arms around her. She clearly was a very bright student, but instilling in her a sense of support and trust, and the interaction that she received from the faculty on that campus just propelled her forward in her career, ultimately receiving a PhD and becoming a major donor to Tuskegee. There might be some buildings there now in her name. That's how much she and her husband have contributed. And all because she was motivated and encouraged and taken under the wings by someone who cared, some faculty members who cared. And so we have this quote here from her. Okay, next. Mentoring, it may be structured or not, It could be vertical, where you have faculty mentoring postdoc scholars who might be mentoring advanced graduate students, who might be mentoring newly incoming students, or it could be horizontal, cohorts and peers. It is certainly, again, a process that requires mutual interest between the parties, and defined expectations between the mentor and the mentee. Mentoring, however it's structured, needs to evolve around having clear expectations and a mutual desire. It must be culturally relevant and sensitive, such that growth and professionalization of the student may occur. It's important that a mentor has a genuine interest in the welfare of the student in mind at all times, and that the mentor not adopt the posture that the mentee is in need of fixing. In other words, that the mentor not adopt a deficit model of mentoring. And certainly, above all, the mentor needs to be a positive role model, him or herself, both personally and professionally. Next. Maintaining support of students through completion is essential to ensure students' successful navigation through the trials and the challenges of graduate education. Encouraging persistence and tenacity in the face of those challenges is key, because as we all know, those challenges will come. Creating an atmosphere of shared values and concerns for each stage of the graduate life cycle is important. The first year, the comprehensive exams, the qualifying exams, the writing stages of the theses and the dissertations. However, I think often overlooked in all of these stages is ensuring clarity about the processes, the procedures, the policies that govern all of these steps in the graduate education journey. It's critical that programs put their policies and procedures in writing. All students should experience the same processes within a program. From one program to the next, procedures may be different, but within a program, procedures should be the same. Students should be clear on expectations. And so codifying policies and procedures in writing to ensure that all students are knowledgeable about program expectations for each of these stages of the graduate life cycle is just simply important to do. And that you can ensure that, again, the same standards of excellence are applied to all students. This is essential. Students, masters, and doctoral committees must function equitably and fairly within a program, guaranteeing that all students receive the same opportunities for success. And if in the unfortunate instance, this is not happening for a student, there must be a structured avenue to redress. And the students must know what it is and must know that it is okay to access an avenue for redress. Finally, celebrating successes of graduate students along the way provides motivation to complete possibly one of the most challenging experiences that a young person may have attempted to date, graduate school. So we have one more poll here, and let's see what you think about this. This is a poll that's asking you to think about how do you identify students or advisees who may be at risk. If you take a look at these responses here and tell us what you think. What's the best way? Don, are we getting responses?
Yeah, I'll have to toss it over to Samantha.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm gonna share them as soon as they're done. It looks like we've got just a couple more people.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Felder, the poll results are on the screen. It was 89% E, all of the above, with 11% A, periodically meet with each of them and ask how they are doing.
Okay, thank you. And you know, I pretty much agree with you. Certainly meeting with students in person is what better way to really engage with students and to learn who they are, understand who they are, understand what experiences they're having. Are they being challenged in ways that you can help support, correcting, and so forth. Excuse me. I'm glad no one actually picked B, although that's okay to do. I don't think it's one of the best ways to identify whether your students are at risk by inviting them to lunch, to your house, and hope that they'll share openly with you. Hope is not the way forward. C, asking the graduate school division to send reports to your program at the end of the term, identifying students whose grades are not up to par, I would suggest is a good beginning if you don't have structures in place, or if you have not established a pattern of meeting with students. The graduate school certainly is interested in knowing the success of students, of all students. And whether they send the reports to you or not, they certainly ought to, I believe, be knowledgeable about the progress of all graduate students. Graduate schools are different around the country. And so I can't say what happens in most places, but at Clemson, the graduate dean of the graduate school is the only person that actually can admit a student to graduate school at Clemson. He is also the person that dismisses a student from graduate school, and he is the person that he or she, more she's lately, is the person who does graduate a student. And so it just simply seemed the logical thing to do for us to begin to develop mechanisms so that we in the graduate school, the deans, would know exactly what was happening with all our students. And I created a system where every month, at the end of every term, we received all the grades. So it was only grades and, for classes. But that was a beginning to help us know that we had students who had dropped by the wayside, and we were able to call them in, call their programs, and get them back on track. And so getting students back on track and ensuring, in fact, that they are at least knowledgeable of the requirements for successfully completing their programs, that's at least a beginning of what we can do to help students be successful. It's not all that needs to be done, and we certainly can't complete the programs for them, but we can certainly make sure that they are aware of the expectations. Accessing admissions information at the beginning of the term, the transcripts and test scores and so forth, to attempt to determine which students might have difficulty, and then keep your eye on their progress. That could be useful, especially if you've taken a chance on some students that you feel might need extra support. You might want to flag those students, and as the semesters go along, make sure that you are keeping up with their progress. And certainly back to A, periodically meeting with those students and ask how they're doing. No better way that I can think of than to do that. So thank you for your input there as well. Next. Finally, and it's important to ensuring completion is by providing ongoing and frequent progress and feedback on progress, including coursework, research, preparation for qualifying exams and comprehensive exams, writing and defending the dissertation, and ultimately seeking employment. Feedback can certainly be in person or in a written assessment, but one way or the other, students should be receiving feedback. I can't tell you how many times I've actually sat and I spent a lot of time with students. I talked a lot with a lot of students, international students, males, females, older students, newly admitted young students that just finished undergrad school. And it never ceased to amaze me how many students really did not have that connection with faculty that you want them to have, that we wanted them to have. How many students really did not know what the procedures were to advance to candidacy, or they did not know how to prepare for the qualifying exams. No one had told them. They just knew a semester or two in advance on their schedules that they would be sitting for qualifying exams. But how to prepare? We had some gaps. We absolutely had some gaps, and we had some work to do to bring students closer together with understanding what our procedures and policies were. And I hope that as you provide support to your students and get to know your students, that you will begin to really zero in on where gaps might be in your programs that you can fill and ensure that the overwhelming majority of your students will be successful. And as we've said already, students don't come with a guarantee. We can do all we can to make sure we admit the best students. And I think that most admissions committees and most folk that admit students into their programs do a reasonably good job of selecting highly intelligent and motivated students. But as I said, life intervenes at every step of their process. And so we have to keep our eyes open, ears open, hearts open for being those individuals on campus who are committed to helping the students to succeed. Next. So what we know about support, it doesn't guarantee success, but it certainly can help to increase student satisfaction. It can impact timely degree completion. It can help create an affinity for your graduate program. It can help ensure professionalization of the students, and it can help strengthen the reputation of your department. Students who leave a program where somebody's wrapped their arms around them, students who leave a program where it's evident that the faculty care about them as human beings, and faculty care about their futures, students certainly will be those who will go out and say, I think if you're thinking about a graduate program, you want to consider Western Kentucky University, because it's a place where they actually care about students. And it's a place that they're going to help ensure that you're going to be successful. And that's the best you can ask for. That's what you want. And that's what we hope for you. Next. So to get more information, if you're interested, and I know again that you've had some sessions on holistic admissions, but there's always more to learn. As we learn, that we share what we know. So you can go to holisticadmissions.org, or any more information you might want to know about the GRE tests and services, you can go to ets.org/GRE/institutions. Or feel free, you can write to me at ffelder@holisticadmissions.org, or to Don Lipker at dlipker@ets.org, or you can go to the GRE helpline at ets.org. And so at this point, you've been a quiet audience, but if you have any questions, we are interested in hearing what they might be. I think you can put them in the chat, or maybe you can unmute and ask the question.
I don't see anything in the chat. You're welcome to use the chat, or you're welcome to just come off mute and ask questions, whatever works best for the team.
Okay.
I don't see any posing questions, but I will ask one for the group if you don't mind. There are some programs that blend undergraduate and graduate students in the same program. When I went to graduate school at a different school in Kentucky, I'm sorry to say, but when I went to a different school in Kentucky, I did not know that information when I started my graduate program, and it was something that was a hindrance for me. Dr. Felder, what is your experience as far as helping them to better understand who they are going to be in the classroom or the lab experience with, and what percentage is graduate and undergraduate students?
Okay, so let me get clear on what was the hindrance for you. Because you were in class with undergraduate students, and perhaps you were in class with a lot of undergraduate students and only a few graduate students. That's what I thought you were saying. Yeah, and I can see how that could be a hindrance in a way. You're going into graduate school and you want to be in classes where you're not the smartest one in the class. You want there to be a lot of other folk who can contribute to the conversations in the class because of experiences and whatnot. And you want to make sure that your class is really being taught at a graduate level. My experience with that is that I don't like it personally. I don't personally like it. I know that even at Clemson, when I first started many years ago, and for those of you who don't know, actually retired from Clemson after 30 years of service in the graduate school. And that's one of the first things I noted when I started working with the graduate curriculum committee was that we had a host of graduate, undergraduate combined courses. And most of them had more undergraduate students than graduate students. So your situation wasn't, I would say, not unique in that regard. On occasion, you had a course that had more graduate students and a couple of undergrads who were seniors who were trying to get advanced. But that wasn't normally the case. What we also had at Clemson at that time, and this is late 80s, early mid 90s, when I actually helped to get rid of all these courses, we had classes that were combined courses for first entry-level graduate students and third year, not seniors, but juniors at the undergraduate level. And so they were called 400, 600, 400, 600, or 300, 600 level courses, 600 being the graduate level, 300 meaning that it was juniors that were able to take those courses, 400 meaning it was seniors. We eliminated through the curriculum committee all the 300, 600 level courses. Just felt like that was a disservice to graduate students. And in the instance where we had really brilliant undergraduate students who wanted to, to advance in their graduate programs in advance, just like you have AP courses for high school students who can take some college level courses, we maintained a lot of those. But I will also say that during our SACS accreditation visits, every time we had a visit, we got dinged about those 400, 600 level courses because students would report that irrespective of what the syllabus says, that graduate students would be required to, produce at a certain level, and undergraduate students had a different standard that basically was not occurring. And so my personal, perspective is that I don't particularly care for it. especially when there's an overwhelming number of undergraduate students in the course. So I'm kind of sorry that happened for you, but you survived.
I survived, yeah.
You
Thank you.
survived.
Dr. Kudali, I do not see any other questions in the chat at this time. So, sir, I'll turn it over to you if you would like to close this out or give us any words of wisdom to end our day on.
Well, thank you so very much, Ms. Dawn Lipker. Dr. Felder, we remain grateful to you and the continued partnership with ETS. We have a lot to digest from your slides. Student success truly is at the cornerstone of our operations in the graduate school and academic affairs. And in fact, we talked about this topic at great lengths at the President's Cabinet meeting today. So your slides will be shared with the campus community. There is a lot to be done at the program level and college level and the institutional level. And we're truly grateful for your excellent presentation. And we look forward to this continued partnership with ETS. And so please join me in giving a round of applause to Dr. Felder.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time today. I hope we said something that will leave you thinking about how you are addressing students in your program and things that perhaps you can do differently or better that will enable them to feel that they are being shepherded by faculty who really care about their success. And I know you do. But we want them to know you do. And in cases where perhaps they don't, you have time to work on that and to increase the relationships between you and your students and to increase success. So thank you for your time. I know it was an hour and a half. I hope it was well spent. And sorry I wasn't able to come there to meet with you in person, but perhaps our paths will cross at some point in the future. So thank you, Dr. Kudali, and thank you, Dawn, and we appreciated this time with you this afternoon.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ms. Dawn Lipker. And also, I'd like to acknowledge the help that I received from Ms. Samantha Hines.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We couldn't do anything without Samantha.
Without her.
Thank you so very much for
Okay.
joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.